I'll move along rather quickly through the slides so that we can get to those questions and have plenty of time for that. So let me start by saying, PMI continues to serve the profession of project management by ensuring practitioners are ready for the future. This means PMI needs to empower project professionals to deliver value in a rapidly changing world where the pace of organizational change is also increasing. And for years, the PMBOK Guide has been the go-to resource for helping practitioners use good practices to deliver value on the job. And this new edition of the PMBOK Guide assists organizations and practitioners to more quickly adapt to change in the market and to apply new ways of working. So let me just start by saying that what I'm going to present is still in draft. We are not quite done, so it is subject to change. I think the structure is pretty solid. So some of the detail may change by the time we get to print, but you'll get a good sense of where we're headed with it, and that's what we want to convey, and then have you really understand this new direction that we're taking with this. So presented for your awareness. Do have your questions ready, and we'll get to that. So our agenda is to look at why now, why this change, and why now. And I want to give you a little context for how we came to that point, and then I'll cover content that's in the 7th edition, specifically how it's structured, what it looks like. Then Kate's going to walk us through this new platform called PMI Standards Plus and what it is able to do for us. And then, like I said, we'll take questions at the end. So let me start with what led to this change. Well, this is just 3 pieces of research, and this happens to be 3 pieces of PMI research, but we did a lot more. So we looked at a lot of information, everything from other market studies, other consultancies, international standards or international documents, looked at academic work. There was a lot of research, but I want to just call out a couple of things that you can observe if you've been reading the PMI research. One is this idea of the project economy. One of the things that it notes is that there's an unprecedented growth in the need for projects. And if there's a need for projects, there's need for project managers and project team members. But it's driven by global economic, political, demographic, and technological needs. So I think it's a huge tsunami that's going to increase dramatically, and that's what the research is telling us. Future way of work. One of the things that called out in that research was that there needs to be a curiosity for learning. And I don't think this is a new concept, but I think it's getting more critical every day. If you're not keeping up with the rate of change, if you're not learning at the rate of change, you're falling behind. And that's a difficult thing, is we're now busier than we've ever been, and yet there's more demand for us to learn more. So we need some flexible tools that will help us to be able to execute really quickly in the tasks that we have in front of us. And then lastly, identifying new ways of working. A couple of observations from that again are not really surprising. We've heard these terms for a while, but design thinking is becoming more and more prevalent as an approach to starting into product development and project work. Certainly, I believe artificial intelligence is going to have a huge impact on the role of not only the project manager, but the project team members as well. And I think if we get this right, it's going to free us up to do what machines can't, and that's to do the hard critical thinking. So not happening tomorrow, but we're already seeing elements of it begin to come to reality and become useful tools that we can rely on and embrace. And then the other thing is this idea of organizational agility, which I've been hearing for years, that organizations want to be more agile. They need to change with the environment faster, but the problem has been that they haven't been able to do it well at scale. So it's being able to scale that up across the entire organization, not just a small piece of it. So all of that, as I said, this is just a sample of the research that went into leading up to the chartering of the work to update the PMBOK guide. But I think the takeaway here is that project management is more and more in demand, and that's a good thing. And the nature of work continues to change. So I think the project practitioner needs diverse skills and flexibility in shaping the work of the project. So simply following a prescribed recipe is not going to work well in the future. What's really needed is guidance on what should be considered, critical thinking on the objectives of the project management processes, and a team that's focused on enabling intended outcomes, not just delivering an output of work. Now, I said we did a lot of research. One other one to touch on quickly is that we actually did some focus group research with users of the PMBOK guide previous editions, as well as a few that are not really well familiar with PMI standards. And three things came out across all of the focus groups that we ran. One is very much a desire to maintain and enhance the credibility and relevance of the PMBOK guide. Strong wording across, like I said, all the focus groups. Second one was improve readability and usefulness, but do it and don't overstuff it. And one of the things we were noticing is the trend to just every update seemed to add another 150 pages to the book. And it's like, okay, we're getting close to 1,000 pages. Is that sustainable in the future? And is that the right way to put all of this information out? So it prompted us to pull back and do some really hard thinking about what is it that we're trying to achieve here and what's the best way to deliver this information. And then the third thing, they said, we really want some vetted supplemental context. So we've got good stuff in the guide, but we need more supplemental content that really helps us apply in practice. And so those three things came out, and that was taken into account as we developed the charter for the work. So the team started the work on that, and this is a graphic that I'm just going to touch on a couple of items here. And I'll give you a way to go look at this graphic at a later point on the website. But I just want to touch on a couple of things that are changing from the way the 6th edition was constructed to the way the 7th is being put together. One is that the 6th edition, especially the standard for project management in the 6th edition, was a prescriptive, is a process approach. And a process approach often is understood to be prescriptive, meaning you've got to do A before B, B before C. So it becomes very recipe. That wasn't what it was intended when it was first drawn out, but that's how people are reading it. And we looked at it and said, maybe that's not the best structure. We need to get to a different perspective on this. And so I'll talk about orienting around principles to guide mindset and actions and behaviors rather than talk about a process. Another piece that is changing between the 6th and the 7th is the 6th edition and previous editions always talked about it being applicable for most projects most of the time. The 7th edition, the team was chartered with, this must apply to any project, all projects, no exceptions. So that was a raising of the bar that caused a great deal of conversation and a lot of hard work, but I think it was worth it. Lastly, just talk about the audience. The 6th edition is really written to speak to the project manager, even though it has application beyond that and it was intended to be applied beyond that. It speaks to the project manager. The 7th edition still does that, but it doesn't speak directly. It talks about the team and leading the team. So roles and functions in the team may change, but what we really wanted to focus on here is that projects don't happen because as a project manager, the project manager certainly does well to lead the team, but the team creates the work and performs the work. And so we needed to broaden that, make sure we're capturing everything that's involved in the project. Not that we don't talk about the project manager's function, but we do. But it's that's not the only thing. It's getting the whole team to come together on a common goal. So that's what led up to the change and the challenge that was put in front of the development team when they began to write and put concepts together. One other thing I want to point out is that there's from time to time confusion because for convenience sake, we have put two books together in one package. So I want to be really clear. There are two separate documents that make up the published or bound PMBOK guide. The first is the standard for project management. And the standard is what carries the ANSI logo. It's what's designated as a US standard. And the guide to the project management body of knowledge then follows that and builds on that foundation. So two separate documents. One is a standard, one is a guide. And I want to make sure we keep that in mind as we move forward. So what's in there? Well, the standard has three major components. The first is an introduction to the standard, as one would expect. And so it talks about what's the purpose of the standard? What are some of the key terms and concepts that are going to be presented within that standard? And then who's the audience? And as I said before, we're looking across all the teams. So it's not just the audience is clear in the statement that we're not talking just the project sponsor, just the project manager, talking about being useful for everyone that has anything or any role or function to perform within the project. So the introduction just sets up the standard. And then the second part of the standard goes into something we call a system for value delivery. And this is a new term, but it's not a new concept. So what we're talking here about is getting the focus on the systems nature of project work, and that anytime you're working with systems of systems, they interact and interrelate and they have influence on each other. Well, we know that we've talked in the past this concept of internal, external environment, the project team within the internal environment. So all of that is still part of the value delivery system. We just wanted to get a bit more focus on the whole system itself and not just see those pieces in isolation. So that's what's covered in the system for value delivery. And then the third section is what I alluded to, the project management principles. Those principles guide behaviors and actions. These principles are aligned with the PMI Code of Ethics and Professional Conduct, but they are not the same thing. So there's no conflict between those, but they're not duplicating it either. This is looking at what are specifically the principles that apply to all projects and that you need to be cognizant of, and how those will then help you guide your behavior and your actions as you make decisions in the work of the project. So right now there are 12 principles described in that section, and I want to give you an example of what those look like so you get a better sense of what do we mean by a principle. So by definition, these had to be actionable, they had to be culturally neutral, they had to be realized, or we had to understand they could be realized in different ways. So we weren't telling the reader how to achieve that principle. We're defining the principle, describing that principle, but leaves open there are a number of ways that you can actually meet the objective of that principle. The other thing the principles do is provide clear guardrails to the project work. So once everybody's on board, these are the principles, this is how we move forward. It does well in helping to focus and to say, no, that would be outside of this principle and that principle guidance. And so that we need to course correct here. And then they apply across the value delivery landscape. It doesn't matter what development approach you're using. So let me give you an example. So a principle deals with engaging stakeholders, and the principle statement is engage stakeholders proactively and to the degree needed to contribute to project success and customer satisfaction. So that's the principal statement, and then the text will go on to explain those elements of that principle, what it means, and how to understand it. Another one we do is focus on value, which says continually evaluate and adjust project alignment to business objectives and intended business benefits and value. So that's two examples of the 12 principal statements. Now, like I said, there's text that goes on to define that further, but we're anchoring on that's the principle that we're trying to meet. So that's the standard. If I go to the guide portion, it also has three major sections. And the first one is called Project Performance Domains. And this really is setting up the framework for the way that the PMBOK Guide 7th edition will be organized. And so what are these domains? Well, if you're familiar with the portfolio standard or the program standard, you've seen performance domains previously, and this is very similar idea. These are grouping of activities. They interact, they interrelate, and they are very much interdependent. And what the performance domains intends to do is put the focus on enabling outcomes, and I'll show you one of the ways that we do that. So let's look at these domains. There's 8 domains that are defined, and I'm not going to walk through these. I just want to give you the sampling that these are the 8 names for those performance domains. We have a number of on-demand webinars available that you can get to from our content hub on our webpage. So we did these in projectmanagement.com over the last 6 months. So there is a whole webinar devoted to just exploring these 8 performance domains. So more detail is available, and I encourage you to start to investigate that. But here's how we present it. At the start of that domain, we do a definition on the left side of this box. So what are we talking about? Well, this performance domain addresses activities and functions associated with stakeholders. Kind of obvious. But the key is the right side of this box. If I am doing the stakeholder performance well, if I'm really performing here, how will I know? And so we give some suggested outcomes that you're trying to drive to, that you want to see stakeholder agreement with project objectives. If you're seeing that, you've got an indicator that you're performing well in the stakeholder domain. These are the 3 that are highlighted at the top, and then I want to say, when you finish that section on that domain and discussing what goes into that, there is a checklist, if you will, at the end that suggests ways of continuing to monitor and check for that you're actually achieving what that domain is focused on. So again, there are 8 performance domains, and they're structured like this around those 8 that I defined. Second major section of the guide is a whole new section on tailoring. And tailoring existed in the previous editions of the PMBOK guide, but it was pulled across each of the knowledge areas. And the desire here was to put together a very solid section of the guide to really help focus on providing a framework for doing the tailoring. So a framework and some key questions to help you tailor processes. The tailoring doesn't replace organizational guidance. It actually looks at organizational guidance and uses that as one of the tailoring components. So the framework for that looks like this. And of course, there's a lot more information again behind this one as well. But it starts with select the initial development approach. Then you want to tailor that for the organizational needs. You want to tailor that for the specific characteristics of the project. And then tailoring isn't a once and done. You inspect the results, you adapt as you go on. So tailoring has a starting process, but it has an ongoing process as you go through. And that's what the framework is trying to help walk the team members through. And this last section of the guide is called Models, Methods, and Artifacts. So things that were in the ITTOs in the past will be captured here, but in a different way. So what we're trying to do is here a high-level description of each item that we bring in. link it over to PMI Standards Plus that we're going to look at in a minute, and see that the models, methods, and artifacts are not what you're trying to produce. They're the means to an end to produce something. So if I break those out, there's models around leadership, communication, change, complexity, and on it goes. And those are just listed, short description of what that model entails and how you would use it. Methods, same thing. There are a number of methods. In fact, the 5 process groups, that is a method. And so it shows up now here in this section. Estimating our methods, meetings and events. How do I do those? Those are methods. There's a lot of methods. And then same thing with artifacts. And these are things like logs and registers, plans, baselines, visual data, visual reports, agreements, contract, and on and on. So what happens is we present these 3 sections in segment 3, and then at the end of the models, at the end of the methods section, at the end of the artifacts section, we provide or present a table that says, okay, we just described all of these models, and across the column headings, here are the 8 performance domains. And then we map those and say, this particular model might be useful to consider in these 3 project performance domains. Or this, Cotter model for change, for instance, might be useful in the stakeholder engagement in project plan, project work, etc. So it's telling you where those are likely to be most useful, but that's the end of the discussion. We're not recommending any one model. We're not recommending a method. We're not recommending an approach. Remember, the charter for the team was any project. And so we want to cover as much as we possibly could of the common methods, models, and artifacts that are in the market. So let me put this together. So I talked about this system for value delivery. So talking from the top of this, you have the principles of project management, which are guiding the behavior. They're influencing within this value delivery system that consists of the external environment in which the organization sits, and then the actual project system that sits inside the internal environment. So you see the 8 performance domains. You see that surrounded by tailoring to fit the project context. And what you're tailoring is the models, methods, and artifacts that are happening within those 8 performance domains and the deliverables. So that's kind of the flow of it. Another way to look at this is to understand the standard is going from process groups to principles as its main structure. Guide is going from knowledge areas to project performance domains as its major construct. And then PMI Standards Plus gives us a platform for how to and practice. And one of the things that we wanted to make sure we were able to do is when we're talking print, we tended to only be able to revise every 3 to 5 years. But new stuff is coming along constantly, and we needed a way to make that available faster. And so what we're looking at and doing here is more how to and practice and develop it as it emerges as we go forward. So that's a quick run through of the 7th edition. Let me just stop here as we go ahead and transfer over for Kate to take it forward from here. I do want to go back to something that was said at the very start. Everybody has in their mind January 2nd, 2021. That must be some kind of big day. The exam, PMP exam, is changing. That has been in process for over a year. It got delayed because of the impact of COVID and shutting down our testing sites, right? It's been out there. This work for the 7th edition isn't even done. So I want to stress to everybody, they are not related, period. The PMBOK guide update never triggers an exam update, and the exam update does not force a trigger to update the PMBOK guide. They run on 2 separate tracks. And yes, right now, the PMBOK guide 6th edition is listed as one of the references that you might want to use and probably should for preparing for the PMP exam. So want to get that one done, and then we'll come back and take questions a little bit. But Kate, if you're ready to go, I will let you have it now. You're on.
Are you muted?
I am muted, and I'm just getting the deck up. Just give me 1 second because I had a quick.
You can just run this one unless you changed it, Kate.
No, I had to change my laptop, so I'm on my personal laptop because of my computer. Give me 1 second, and I can get this. Marv's been navigating for me today. It seems this is the second webinar that my computer has had a glitch. So good evening, everyone. I'm so happy to be here tonight to talk to you guys a little bit about the new member benefit. I don't know how many of you had, maybe if you want to chat, received an email announcing this new member benefit. Anybody? About Standards Plus? No? Has anybody?
I got one either today or yesterday.
All right, let me get the ball from Marv and make sure that, here we go, and I'll share.
You have it, Kate, but I'm seeing a problem with it here that caused our the slide share to go away.
Perfect.
All right.
Am I on?
You are on. You're sharing your screen now.
Okay. And I apologize, guys. I'm on my old personal laptop, so I hope that this. Yep, we're good. Okay, so let me flip through here. I apologize. The Standards Plus, guys, so this is a new application that was just rolled out as a member benefit. It's actually been, it's probably been in production. There's been about 6,000 users that have been in and out of there testing it out over the past year. I came on board mid-launch as a product manager. I am, a PMI member. I have studied for the PMBOK, the PMP multiple times, and we'll just pass that along. I'll say that I probably, maybe we'll give it one more whirl. My husband's a PMP certified member, but, so I don't know. Anyhow, I'll just jump into it. So the idea behind this is that we wanted to provide not necessarily an easier way for you to navigate the PMI standards, because you have the book, you know how to navigate it, but we wanted to give you, a different way to navigate the PMI standards. So we came up with the Standards Plus, and we wanted it as a complementary, a supplement to the actual standards themselves. So what we have here is, let me flip through here, is a digital solution giving project professionals easy, searchable access to content from PMI standards and guides. Here's the big plus, though. It's original, shareable, how-to articles, case studies, interactive graphics, videos, templates, you name it, across all industries and approaches. What does that mean, Katie? So what we do is, what we did was, and we continue to do, is we go out to the different industries. We have volunteers that want to contribute, and we're not just talking about the tech field. We're talking about the government, construction, whatever the case may be, and we come up with these these guides, these articles, these case studies, graphics on how to actually apply these standards in your everyday practice. I know for myself, I am a project manager, by trade, and a product manager for that matter. For the life of me, when I was reading, I'll just be real and transparent with you all. For the life of me, I could never take what I was learning in the book and apply it in my job. There are certain things, I worked for RICO for a little bit, and they had the water flow methodology, and they were really big on some of the practices in there, but I struggled a lot, So what this does is it gives me that ease and that flow of I can go in there and I can look for a certain article. Well, how would I need an action register, or, I need to search for, how this is applied in government offices and so forth. This is the application that we're going to continue to build out that will allow you to do this. So it's digital. It is on. There is a mobile app for it too. So what the problem does it solve? Printed books are challenging to navigate. We know how big those books are. make it difficult to find what you're looking for. We have great search features within Standards Plus, and we provide you real-world examples of standards applications in real time. Real time means that we're constantly getting, our content development team is constantly going out there and getting new content to put in there. So how do I access? So for those of you that did see the email, if you are a PMI member, you can go out to standardsplus.pmi.org and log in with your PMI credentials. This just launched yesterday as a member benefit. So there are non-members that have been in there using the application for some time and that have it free until the end of the year, where in that case, we do turn to a subscription base, but I'll get into that for non-members. So here's a little just kind of a screen share of what you're going to see in here. So what it looks like is, you search for stakeholder analysis. Up here, you're going to bring up, here's the original content card, for example. And what you can do is you can go and click on this, and it shows you why stakeholder analysis is essential in government. Here's the right up here. But this view source here, what it's going to do is it's going to kick you out and connect you to that actual part of the standard or guide that it's speaking to, right? So you can apply it back to. Right now, we just launched Agile Practice Guide in there. We have the PMBOK 6th edition. Agile Practice Guide just launched in there. So you're going to see a lot of original content coming out for that. The verbatim, the books in there. And when I say the books in there, it's actually in, I don't want to call them chunks, but they're easy to read sections, right? So if you were to type in a certain section, you can pull up that section or that topic, right on your laptop, wherever you are, or on your iPhone, wherever it may be. And we did this purposely. It's not a book. It's not, you guys can get your digital downloads from PMI.org. It is in these, these content card, easy to read blocks, if you call them. So from there, you can, here's a little picture of what we're looking at for the search option. So as you can see here, we have the different approaches, industries, formatting is like the article, case study, and then under here, what we've added is the standard and guide. So here's Agile that launched yesterday, PMBOK 6. We're working on the work breakdown structure and the BA guide as we speak, that's going through QA, and we expect to see that in Q1 of next year. And then all the different topics that you can go on and choose from. The really cool thing that I like about this is that there's a digital standards glossary that we're building out. So every time we add a different standard or a guide, we have the ability to go in here and you can search for the terms. And it's going to break it down. It's going to tell you what standard it's coming from or guide, or if when we do implement the lexicon, that will be in there too. So just to go over some key highlights and dates, this just came out of the gate yesterday. I'm sorry if I sound a little bit hoarse. I was up a little late last night and the night before, just trying to get some additional stuff ready, set, and go for you guys accessing this for the first time. We've been working heavily in the development department and getting this out the door and in good shape. So this is what we did. We launched it as a PMI member benefit. And it was part of the end of the year member thank you campaign that went out yesterday. I think it was like around 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock Eastern time. We launched the Agile Practice Guide, the PMBOK guides in there as well, 6th edition. Right now, non-members can go in there and access it for free, non-PMI members. On January 4th, we're going to be launching the subscription. And what that's going to be is that's going to be via PayPal for $8 a month. Okay, and anytime a non-member can go, our goal is to get these non-members to flip over and become a PMI member, and consume the additional benefits that come with a membership. But for right now, if people just want to consume it as a standalone, it's $8 a month. Okay, we only have it today. It's only in English. We're working on translations and a few other languages to be tested in 2021. So I know this was like a short overview, but the bottom line is you have the website, you know where to go, get in there and check it out. If you have any feedback, there's various areas within Standards Plus that you can submit your feedback as well. And then you can also submit it to our distribution email address, which I'll put in the chat. So I hope that was a good high-level overview. And hope, if you have any questions, feel free. You can open up the chat.
Kate, this is Kate. Is there? I know on that slide there was like a link you could click on. But
Yep.
could you put the link in the chat for everybody?
Yeah.
Like what the actual link is? Because I know somewhere along the line I got that link and I actually went on there and played around. I don't remember where I got it from, but that would be, I think that might be something that, everybody can go on there. If you're a member, right, you can go on there.
Yeah, member or not, you can go on there. Even if you're a non-member, it's free until January 3rd.
Oh, okay. So, all right. So, yeah.
There is a question. Do you have a roadmap for PMI standards plus development areas?
Development areas. Do you mean which standards we're implementing next?
And you can unmute and clarify probably a little bit more.
Okay, yeah. So, I was looking at the industries and the topics, and as you were talking, there may be specific application areas that get eventually added to this. And I'm in food manufacturing, we do new product development, and so we apply, PMI standards to our project management for new product development. I was just curious on the industries and topics, if you have a roadmap for that or a plan.
Our standards team actually comes out with the roadmap of what we're going to be implementing next. And I know that is I don't have it up in front of me right now. I mean, what I can speak to is that we have the BA guide and WBS, and then eventually, the PMBOK 7 is going to come in. It is built out. I just don't have it in front of me. But if there's something specific that you're looking for, or you're looking to, if you'd like us to take it into consideration, you can feel free. I'll put our distribution email in there. You can feel free to contact me, and I can look into that if needed.
But that's also a feedback form within the tool itself. So if you are looking for something, you don't find it, it will ask you, what were you looking for? Let us know.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, thank you, Mark, for bringing that up. We've had this Standards Plus has been out there since before I even came on board at PMI. So it was probably May? No.
Well, we were in alpha in October of 2019, and we've been in beta since I think about April of 2020, March, something like that. Yeah, so it's been out for a while.
They've been out for a while, and there's 6,000 plus users that have been using it this year that have been in there, and have been banging away and giving us our feedback. The feedback actually is what is driving us to get the updates in there and the changes in there that we need. And we're going off of the recommendation of that feedback. And we're going to continue, now that this is launched as a PMI member benefit, really heavily start looking and digging into this feedback. So it is the tool. There's tools, this tool's in there for that reason. Thank you, Mark, for bringing that up. That's going to drive the need.
So Kate and Marvin, are you able to, there are a couple other questions.
Yeah.
The next one is, where does all content in Standards Plus come from? Who writes the case studies, etc.?
So we have, so our content development team, we have volunteers within, the organization that contribute. PMI, maybe Mark can speak to this, I don't know, but there are volunteers that they've had on board that are experts, subject matter experts. They get vetted out. They go through a series of, vetting process within PMI. We also have different, product experts that write these pieces that are very familiarized with PMI. Active contributors.
Yeah, I think the key word is, it was back to one of the things we saw in the early research, Kate, before you came on. And that was, we wanted vetted supplemental content. There's a lot of stuff on the web, right?
Yes.
I want it vetted, and that's part of what that process content comes in. That somebody can't just raise a hand and say, "I'll write that." Is like, who are you? What qualifies you to write that? You know, so there's a vetting process before content actually gets posted.
Yep.
The next question. Has PMI selected communicated their curriculum vendors for the certification exam starting in January 2nd, 2021?
I can answer that by saying I have no idea. I do standards, and really the people that know the certification are the certification team and their processes. I got my hands full with standards, right? Honestly. So I know they've got the exam updated. I know I've talked with them because these are my friends, right? But yeah, specific process, I would email to customer care or to the certification team.
How will I manage my projects differently?
I know, I love that question. I was waiting for you to get to it. You know, the reality is you may not. What we're trying to do is help the team get a focus on, I'm not just trying to build a widget or an output. I am trying to enable a value that will drive benefits and value for the end user of the organization. Somebody's going to get value from this work. What is it they're trying to do? Because that's going to open up and unleash the capability of the project team to outperform what was expected, right? So I would say, first and foremost, that is the challenge. And if we, in this update to the standard and guide, and it won't be January 1 that you get that, but when we do publish, if you've read through that and it makes you stop and think and question, is this really driving the value that we're trying to create? Is this process helping? Is there another way to do that? If it promotes critical thinking, we have succeeded. So I think that's what will be different in your project in 2021 when we publish and after you read it.
These were the questions so far in the chat. Unless I missed something up above.
Marvin, I also see that you put in there your PMBOK in the chat, that you put in the PMBOK Guide 7th edition updates page link.
Yes. So that's where I had said at the start that I was using that graphic and I wasn't going through all of it. That's on that content page, and there's other stuff, and we continue to create more. It's where you can find out the latest information on the PMBOK guide, and it will have a link to get you over to Standard Plus if you need that too.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I took a look at that page. There's a lot of information there. That's kind of the central place. Yep.
Yeah.
Definitely a bookmark.
Yep.
Yeah, until we're done. You know, once we get done, we won't have anything more new to say, but we're not there yet.
So if the PMBOK 7 if it were going to be in print, it will be in print, right?
Yes, it will. Will be in print.
And usually, how many pages do you think it's going to be?
If I can be given leeway, I will say 250 to 300 pages when it's done.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, I was just reviewing the 6th edition. I was doing some work on it this week, and I looked at it and said, you know, if we could just capture all of this great information on this tool and have it where I can go grab it when I need it, and not in the way of my reading about this knowledge area, that would really have been helpful. So that's what Standards Plus is doing. That stuff is getting pushed in there. They're creating original content as well to supplement that. It's going to be huge.
That's good. That's good.
Are there any other questions from anyone?
Hi, this is Jason Michaels. I've got a question, if I may. So I came into the PMBOK guide and got certified around version 4, but I've gone back and read the guides before that, even before it was called the PMBOK guide, when it was just a PMBOK. And it seems like early on in PMI, people had these ideas that there were project managers and they were trying to figure out what they all had in common and establish a common lexicon. And in the early versions of the PMBOK guide, there was this idea that there was no one right way to do it. It was just this idea of kind of pulling everything together. And then around version 3 or version 4, many, many more people came into PMI. The idea of project management really took off. And the color of it changed to be, there's one correct way to run a project, and here it is written down for you. So if you see people like me who came into it around that time, they feel like, I looked up the answer in the back of the book. I know the one correct way to be a project manager. You can recognize if you're doing it wrong because it's not the way that I know. And then in 5 and 6, we developed the talent triangle. We said it's important to not just have your artifacts. It's important to understand business. It's important to be able to lead people. We brought in the whole idea of agile project management in addition to waterfall. It feels like version 7 is even going more in the direction of there's no one right answer. There's a bundle of things we're trying to accomplish. And so we're kind of throwing our arms out wide. We're making this big tent, right, and involving everyone in. So am I reading that right? And what would you add to it, or what would you correct?
Yeah, I think you are reading that right, in that if you look at the history of project management, the development approach has continued to evolve, and not just in a singular direction. It's diversifying, it's showing a lot of different approaches, right? So I think what's changing here is we've recognized that, and we're presenting the content in a way that's not at all prescriptive, but it's putting that focus on why are you doing this? What is essential that you must be thinking about? And then here's a whole toolbox of tools. So pick wisely and apply that as needed, and we'll give you guidance on that, but it's not preferring one over the other. If I can tell, let me take you down a rabbit trail for a minute. I'll give you a personal story. My avocation is music, and I have been front of house engineer for years. And I obviously had to develop my skills because, one of the biggest changes I ever had was about 6 years ago when I was able to put in a digital console in our church. And it was like, this is huge. I now have a wealth of tools at my fingertips. And I have a bunch of volunteers who didn't have the experience level I did. And I would have to, here's this tool. Tell me what you're struggling with. What do you want to change? And I will teach you the tool that will do that for you. So that's kind of the same approach I think the 7th edition is taking here. It's getting that, understand the tool and how to use the tool, then you'll know which one to grab when you're trying to do what you're trying to do.
I think that's a great metaphor. It's really analogy.
Yeah. It's also,
and I love that we start with adding value to something, and then we work backwards toward what tool we should be using to add that value.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the idea of those tables is to, put the menu in front of you. And if you start to learn what those tools are, then that menu will help you say, look, I've narrowed down, I know it's these two or three are going to be useful. Let me think about which one is going to be the easiest to implement here.
Makes sense.
Marv, how does this relate to disciplined agile? I haven't gone through disciplined agile training, but we've had some presentations on it, and I'm feeling like there's some similarities, especially like is your way of working, and
yeah, and those I would say they were serendipity, but that observation has been made because I didn't know a thing about disciplined agile.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not sure that anybody on the development team, because I sat in all of their discussions, right? And I don't recall that term ever coming up, and yet we seem to have this kind of alignment on the way we're thinking. So yeah, I'm in the same boat. I have not done the deep dive. I've started into way of work or choose your wow. Have not studied that. Again, I get my hands full right now. It's on my reading list.
No, but it must that must mean it's right then, right?
Well, I think it's the mindset that's right. You know, whether or not any one of us gets it exactly right, I don't know if I can answer that. I'd like to think we did, but the thing I want to stress is if we got the mindset right, we did get it right.
There is a question regarding Agile. Are we almost at the point where the Agile philosophies will be merged with the PMBOK?
Yeah, so we didn't take anything specific in Agile, but we certainly understood the Agile manifesto. We certainly understood the plethora of what is called Agile. And in fact, we chose to use the word adaptive instead because Agile has a very specific meaning to people. So, you know, I think it's merging together. And I will give you my own personal bias. I've said for a long time, there is no such thing as pure waterfall, and there's no such thing as pure Agile. We work in a continuum, and we're moving around in that continuum. And the people that are on the fringe trying to say that, you know, we're the Agilist, we are the waterfallist, or whatever they are, they're not in the real world. The real world is we've always had change, even in a waterfall or predictive environment. In the Agile community place, you have to plan. Yeah, even if it's only for the next 2 weeks, you're planning. So that's kind of my personal soapbox on that one. And I saw the comment on the Behringer X32. I got you one up with the Allen and Heath T110 120. So go ahead.
Good, you saw that question. I was reluctant. I'm like, we must be getting to the end.
Yeah. You think?
No.
Anybody else have a burning question that we?
Any question is a good question. So.
You've got the experts here, so.
How many people worked on version 7 in total?
That's a good one. I should have brought that up, but I actually took the slide out to give Kate time. So in total, we're estimating that we're just shy of 1,000.
Wow.
So here's how it breaks out. Core development team, there are 14 subject matter experts. Globally based, wide diversification of industry experience and experience with various approaches, right? It was a very diversified core team that was coordinating all of this. Then we took a somewhat agile approach to the development process in that in the past, they would have sat in a back room, wrote the whole thing, and then handed it over to a handful of subject matter experts to say, review and tell us what you think, which has worked, but it was a huge lift to get to that point and then a huge rewrite. And so what we did is broke this down. So each section that I just went through of those 6, each section went to a review team, what we call one, very unique, review team 1. About 35 individuals, globally dispersed, same kind of experience base. They reviewed that, gave us feedback. The development team took that and then reworked that section and gave them the second section while they were doing it. And then they got the second section back, they did the work, right? Then we put together the standard, and then we put together the content for the guide, and each of those individually went to a whole separate review team. It's okay, now give us feedback again. And again, went through the same process. They looked at the standard, they gave us feedback, we made adjustments to improve it. Same thing with the guide. And then the standard took a third step, and that is put it out in the public and ask for their feedback. And so back in January and February of this year, we exposed the whole standard for feedback, took that information in, made revisions based on that. Yeah, so that was that portion, and then, like I said, we're close to 1,000. The part I didn't talk about is we did global workshops. So before we even started writing, we were testing and getting global workshops underway to help us identify the principles and the domains. So that added another 250 or so participants. And those focus groups then started, or workshops became, they started to shift as the development team wrote content. Then we started vetting or validating the content with them. So, okay, here's what we got. So at North America Conference in 2019, we had a draft concept for the principles, and we actually brought that in front of a session there and said, react. So, yeah, long-winded answer, but over 1,000 have been involved.
That's such a comprehensive process. It's going to give you such a well thought out final product.
I would add that slide back, Marvin.
It will be. I only hit it just because of time.
I've got another question if no one else wants to go.
Yeah, there's one question from John. I like to think ahead. What is going to be included in version 8, or will it be called version X?
Oh, that is not the way to end my day. It's been a brutal year trying to get this thing finished and pushed out the door. I don't even want to think about I might have to start 8 soon. But honestly, the answer to that is I hope some tweaks. I hope it's only tweaks. We're trying to get to the point where the standard is stable. We don't have to change it because we really nailed it. And the guide, let Standards Plus do the evolution of the tools. If we can stabilize a little bit better there, then we probably only have some minor adjustments to make. So it may be a 7.1.
That's awesome. Jay, did you have a question?
Yeah, we're getting close to the end. I'm reluctant to open up a can of worms, but here it is. So I'll remind you, I love that you're spreading it out. I love that we're making it more flexible, like a big box of tools. But you can't say, go do whatever you want, or it's not a standard anymore. So at what point, where did you feel yourself having to pull back in and say, we've got to put some rails around this?
Yeah, and that ultimately is what they tried to do with the principles.
Okay.
So when you see those principle statements, it's saying, if you can find, and we do recognize the code of ethics, right? So we're saying that one of the principles actually addresses ethical conduct. So, but if what you're doing is legitimate and you're achieving this, then it works. Go forth and conquer. I wouldn't change it.
So I know you've got your hands full with standards. Did the testing guys ever come to you and go, thanks a lot? How are we going to write an exam for this?
No, because they are already, so it's really interesting. I've been thinking in terms of a Venn diagram for this, because what happens is we're looking at the same audience, so to speak, but we're coming at it 2 different ways. And so it's not unusual that we start to land in similar spaces. We've made similar observations, but there's not this, the PMBOK guide does not serve as the reference for an exam. And you can talk to the question writers and they will tell you, oh no, we didn't even look at the PMBOK guide for that question,
But that clears up so much.
Yeah, well, but that's why they tell you they do have to have a limited set. They can't just go get a question out of thin air. They have a set, and I think it's something of 10 or 12 identified references. It says, these are what we use, and for every question I've been told, there must be at least 2 valid reference points that confirm that is in fact correct. So that's kind of the background. So yeah, the fact that we're pushing the PMBOK guide out to production, doesn't affect the exam at all. What will happen is the next cycle, when they start to do question development, they will have a brand new book that the ink just dried on, and they might start drawing information from it.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
This has been great. Thank you. Thank you all.
Yeah, thanks. Some great questions, and it allowed me to talk about my music passion. So.
Loved it.
Well, thank you both very much, very much. This is wonderful of you to do this, and we will see you on projectmanagement.com, I think.
I'm there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Good night, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Have a good one.